the top left, where we will share some more information, where you're also very, very welcome to share after the debate or throughout the debate your questions, your points, so that panelists can answer directly, or we'll just pick it up as a moderator to address it to the speakers throughout the next hours. So I think that is what is happening. We will make some later announcement on what comes after. But before going to the presentation of my dear colleague Ned, well, as you have seen on the description of the event, I would just like to read out to have a bit of an introduction to the topic, and then we will move on if that is fine for you. So the need for planning and action at every company connected to the internet. Among its predictions are some scary concerns for contractors and businesses in general. The lack of consensus around consumers' IoT standards has raised concerns about security, privacy, interoperability, and equity. We would like to explore, with the contribution of our dear experts today, a multi-stakeholder coalition work together to agree on IoT security requirements for consumer-facing devices. The experts will discuss to maximize the positive benefits and minimize harm for all of society. You can also support this effort to raise awareness and advance best practices throughout the industry, as well as to encourage cooperation across stakeholders to advance the security of consumers' production by working with us, collaborating, coming to our networking and business opportunity meetings coming. So let's talk about this more in detail. So with this, I would like to pass the word first to my colleague Ned, who is also running the Alliance for Digital Transformation, to introduce UTech, and then we will move on with the debate and the presentations. Ned, could you take over, please?
Thank you, Markus. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ned Piric, and I'm Director for Digital Transformation and Smart Cities. And today I have a great pleasure and honor to be on your webinar, Internet of Things, with a very interesting topic, where I will very shortly introduce EU Tech Chamber. EU Tech Chamber started 6 years ago with a very simple vision: technology obliges. Our organizational structure consists of regional technology and impact alliances. Regional alliances, one country, two continents, and one region. Technology alliance like IoT, that webinar that we speak today, and together with mobility, energy, of course, smart city, environment, digital transformation, sustainable manufacturing, and with our new section, which is food, farming, and fisheries. And of course, we are paying lots of attention to impact, and we have 4 impact alliances, which is finance, SDG, climate action, and women in technology. We are number one EU platform for technology exchange and business network. Why we are saying that? Because we are doing more than 200 webinars per year. So every working day, some of the mentioned sections have a webinar in their own, or organize their own webinars with close to 700 speakers. We are preparing to organize more than 20 expos, which will be hybrid events and virtual exhibitions. And we have over 50,000 registered people, and 90% of them, they are company owners and decision makers, which is very important for business and networking. And we also do over 400 networking meetings a year. What we provide is access to speakers and panelists with exclusive market insights, business opportunities, dedicated network meetings, and also European Union projects and fundings, which is unique access to European Union tenders. This is our ecosystem. This is our ecosystem and value proposition. As you can see, we have Insights, Visions for Europe magazine that we are very proud of. Then we also do white papers, position papers, newsletters, as mentioned already, European Union tenders. And then we have many programs such as social media, digital transformation, awards, climate action partnerships, and the European technology centers, as well as technology forum with the virtual booths, virtual expos, follower database, and digital and physical events. So if you wanted to engage with us, please contact Marcus, who is actually moderating today's webinar, who is Director for Partnership and Institutional Cooperation, and also my dear friend and colleague, Federico Gonzalez de Aledo, who is a Director Membership for EU Tech Chamber. I wish you fantastic webinar. I know it's going to be a fantastic discussion, and stay tuned for our next digital event from European Technology Chamber. That's all from me. Back to you, Marcus.
Thank you, Ned. I will mute you now to enter then to me again. Yeah, thank you for this introduction. We tried to be as crisp as possible to present EUTech. As such, you should know with the structure of in total 17 alliances, just a new one has been established, which is about food farming and fisheries. So to address also a sector highly relevant, especially these days. I think we follow all the news, but today it's about IoT. And again, well, I think we have a very nice selection of great panelists today, and I would like to run fast. So let me introduce to you Mr. Stefan Schwichtenberg. He's CEO of Pilar GmbH, limited company from Cologne, Germany. And this company is basically working on integrating architecture for IoT and cybersecurity. And I'm very sure that he will bring some very added value for paving the floor for later discussions. Stefan, would you like to share? Well, I see already your screen. Sorry, I was too slow. It's already prepared. If you would like to start, but please also feel free to say a bit more about your company, what you're doing, and then we enter into the topic. Floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and welcome everybody. So as already mentioned, I currently cannot control the slides, so I will just say words if it should be forwarded. Can you go to the next slide? We will present to you today the cybersecurity mesh. That is a development that has also been picked up by Gartner in the recent time.
Stefan, if I may interrupt, normally, if you have shown, you should normally just also move to the next one. Is that not working?
That is currently. Wait. I have to become the presenter, and then I can go. Okay. So sorry.
There you go. Okay, wonderful.
Sorry. So I'm going to present the a new development, cybersecurity mesh. So for us itself, it's not a new development, but the term has been pointed out by Gartner, as you will learn in a few minutes. And we would like to do a short definition. What is a cybersecurity mesh and what is needed? We can give a practical example so that you can see the benefit of using the approach of a cybersecurity mesh, and we can also then in the end we can shortly introduce our own project, which is called Neuropeer, and then we can go to the question and answer session. Who are we? So we are the team of Pilar GmbH, as already mentioned, situated in Cologne in Germany. We are doing technology consulting and enterprise integration architecture or enterprise security architectures. And basically, we started our own development in 2016. That basically elaborates on decentral network approaches and on optimization and integration of different data assets in a company. And that's also our specialty. So in terms of what we can do for you. But back to the topic, what is actually a cybersecurity mesh? And what we see based on our experience is that we see that we need to connect many different data sources. So we see that the networking between companies, between our customers is increasing. And here it is stated that this is the networking, but I would also like to point out that actually it's the data. So if the data is the new oil, then we need to take care that the data can flow fast between the different persons, companies, within or throughout the internet. And that, of course, then raises security concerns, what you can do to protect your data. So in other words, the cybersecurity mesh is a critical component if we would like to continue with the IoT. Somebody stated a few years ago, the S in IoT is the security. So I don't think that we can do without security. As already mentioned, Gartner put out a definition of a cybersecurity mesh, and that's for Gartner, it's a composable and scalable approach to extending security controls even to widely distributed assets. Its flexibility is especially suitable for increasingly modular approaches consistent with hybrid multi-cloud architectures. That's a lot of buzzwords in this sentence. But what is really, for me, it's about security automation. So we need to have the same security controls deployed throughout our whole architecture. And we can't continue to just do things later. So if you look at the security today, then we experience that's rather like a leaky button. So once you stop one hole where the security is not enough, that you put a finger on it, and then you can then there's a next hole which is appearing. So we have to stop with this approach, and we need to embrace basically this cybersecurity mesh approach as Gartner has put it out. And that means we need to have much more algorithm-driven connectivity. So we don't want to set up everything new again. And the other are basically already prerequisites for this algorithm connectivity, the other point. So if you would like to embrace this approach, then of course you need digital identities, you need privacy, you need a proper management for authorization. Ownership is its own sort of problem. And in our opinion, a cybersecurity mesh should of course be open source. So these are for us critical aspects what a cybersecurity mesh should contain. We can already see in the pandemic that we have that the companies send their workers to home. So many of us, as today, are working from home, and also attackers are increasingly using these home office spots because they're missing important security features. So it becomes increasingly easier for hackers to attack companies. And you can also see it from a different point of view. If we would like to work from home or from anywhere in the world, then we need to enable this. And as we move through the world, the data also moves. So what happens to the data if we move it back and forth between our different locations? And that's a crucial point to view how we can protect data. But not actually, and that by doing this, we can also then protect our enterprises. We can also look at it from the B2B perspective. So if companies would like to connect to each other and exchange data, then of course they will need the same kind of security best practices. We can't afford it if one company is having less security than another one. So we have seen supply chain attacks in the past. We see how critical it is. Maybe you have heard of the attack on a company based in America, which basically rendered over 2,000 other companies to not being operable. So that is one thing that you have to keep in mind. If you approach a standardized and a cybersecurity mesh, then of course you can reduce the cost, because if you repeat everything in the same manner, then you have less complexity and you have the same kind of security controls everywhere over the place. And if we have this automated connectivity, then of course you also have the flexibility to launch new initiatives, and you can connect faster to your B2B partners, and you can get faster to the data that you need for your work. So having said this, so a cybersecurity mesh or cybersecurity as a mesh, it's a practical and adaptable approach. You can use it basically anywhere in your company. And it makes it possible for you to access any kind of information, regardless where your workforce is currently working. So regardless which data it needs, and it gives you an increased visibility over your whole architecture. In cybersecurity, we always want to have an holistic picture of our architecture, so that we know what is happening, that we can do the proper risk analysis. And in a cybersecurity mesh, you will automatically get this kind of overview in our point of view. Key indicators, of course, less vulnerabilities. Currently, we see that there are zero-day exploits which can be used by hackers. But with the cybersecurity mesh, if you have the same kind of controls everywhere, then you of course you have a reduced attack surface. Of course, there can be a zero-day exploit in the cybersecurity mesh, but that is valid for any kind of software. Deploying individual security tools means that you have to make them interoperable. And that means you have to do something in addition to just use one single tool. If we talk about high automation in cybersecurity, then of course all these tools can work interoperable with each other, and that will reduce the cost to deploy such a cybersecurity mesh or your overall cybersecurity architecture. And at the last point, so migration, we have seen that in the past, when we move data or when we move applications from one cloud environment to another one, that this is a high effort, and that also applies to customer data if we move it around. So if we have a different kind of approach for protecting data of our customers, then migrating data to a different data center, of course, becomes much easier. So that's for the definition of what is important and why you should embrace the cybersecurity mesh. And we can have a practical example for an IoT environment. Because so it's RRS, there's a typo in here, as I just see. So it should be Robot as a Service Connectivity. So let's just jump into it. So if we look at the industrial IoT and you have a robot device sitting in the middle, then you can see by this picture that we have many, many dependencies. So software updates probably is very clear to everybody that we need to think about the software updates coming to the robot arm. But we also have maybe service partners. We have a manufacturer of the robot who would like to get some data. We have a value chain partner where we would like to exchange data about the product that this robot arm is producing. And we have a maintenance engineer, which actually would like to do the monitoring if the robot is working properly, all this kind of interactions. And the problem with this is, so this is an idealistic picture, and that sounds easy. We build up a connectivity. But the fact is that the maintenance engineer, for example, could work from home, or it could come to your company, and he would like to have the same kind of access. And that's not matching with the security that we currently have in the IoT environment. So as we move robots and as we move data throughout our environment, the interactions change, and we have a very complex and complicated authorization management that we have to take care of. So the data collection differs for each kind of scenario. And currently, we are rather building static connectivity for one scenario, but we are not prepared for constantly changing this kind of connectivity. There are approaches, for example, for software updates. Named data networks, for example, they are a good extension for distribution networks, so they are especially suited for software updates. And that's an interesting approach because it's replacing IP and DNS-based networks with named data channels. So that is interesting because you automatically gain data provenance. You know where your data is coming from because there is an identity attached to it. And we can basically remove a lot of the middleware, the inefficient middleware technologies that we need to transport data over to the robot arm. Because everything is now identified with the name of the software update, but not with a direct connectivity to a specific system. So that's a different, it's a kind of thinking and it's different. So if you think about names and not about connectivity to DNS names, then you start to think about data and how you can protect data. The second approach that, of course, is interesting is the zero trust. So that is currently rather a methodological approach. And basically, zero trust is about there is no perimeter or no artificial perimeter, but the identity is your perimeter. So if you look at the picture in your right, each of these components has its own digital identity, or even maybe more than one digital identity. And that is what we need to protect. So we can't afford anymore the approach to say we are behind a firewall and everything behind this firewall is safe and secure, because we know actually that external threats, they are a valid attack vector, but most attacks are successful because we have internal threats. And because maybe not by accident, somebody is clicking on the phishing email and he has access to the internal network, and then your network is gone. So in this zero trust network, we have much more possibilities to have interactions, to change connectivity based on attribute-based access control. And that means we can allow much more fragmented information flows and we can protect them actually. So just by changing an attribute, so we can change the connectivity from the robot arm to the factory, or we can change the connectivity to move to the cloud. But you don't have to do any manual work for this. There is also an initiative, the Data Spaces, International Data Spaces Association, which also defines that data interactions are the driver for our IT architecture and especially for our future IT architecture. So we have seen in our example that the robot arm is not only producing data, but it's also consuming data. So it's a classical, even our robot is a classical prosumer example. And each of us is also a prosumer. And we have currently no way of expressing this in the proper way, or to build this in the technological way. What I think is important in terms of data spaces is that we can have different data owners for different kind of data sets. Again, an example from the pandemic. If you're suffering from infectious disease like corona, then of course you are the data owner of this of the results of your of visiting the doctor. But of course also the government has an interest in this kind of data because they would like to warn other people. So that is why we have here in Germany we have the COVID-19 open source app, which enabled us to track these things. But it's just an example that there are different data owners and that we have to respect these kind of different data owners. But then is the question, how can you then protect the data if there are different data owners? How can you make it accessible to these different data owners? What actually does it mean when you are a data owner? So that means we need to have a look at the end-to-end process of this B2B integration. So we can't continue to set up small-sized solutions, but rather have a look at the whole picture and then see how we can protect the data in it, and afterwards drive down to the different security measures. We wanted to show a practical example, but it's not yet ready. So we have to skip it to the next fair, but I'm confident that we can show it to you at the FrostCon. That's an open source conference based in Cologne. If you would like to come by and visit us, there you're welcome. I hope that we can visit and that the pandemic allows us to exhibit our practical example. It's a robot arm that you can control and where you can take ownership of. So the question is, we presented the cybersecurity mesh as a concept, so and we presented you all these ideas. So how can you solve it? And I'm happy to present you our idea to all these problems or these challenges, and that is Neuropeer, our own kind of networking library which automates many of the security parts that you would like to have. The first thing that we would like to mention is that our approach has received funding from the Next Generation Internet Initiative from the European Union. And I also would like to mention that this Next Generation Internet has funded many more interesting projects that you should have a look at. So that's really a good resource for future architectures. So that's it's really awesome what they are doing. So in short, what is Neuropeer? We think it's an enabler for secure, scalable, sovereign data communication. We have made it open source because we believe in open source. We use many open source components on ourselves and with our own software development. So this is also our way to give back to the community. And what we are doing is we are doing a decentralized data exchange for devices, for data. And our current approach is that we are working industry independent. So you can apply it to the health industry, you can apply it in the industrial IoT. There is no limit in terms of the sector that you would like to use this library. But of course, there will be specific parts that need to be adapted for each industry. What are our specialties? So we have embraced the security and the privacy first approach. And some of these are self-explaining. So for example, of course, you need digital identities. What we do is we have a dual encryption layer. So we have on one side, we have a transport encryption and we have an end-to-end encryption on top of it. But I don't want to talk about each of these topics. Maybe let me pick two. One is standardized security measures. So currently, when we are looking at security, we often just look at the lower OSI layers to add security to our connectivity. But what we are doing is really looking at the data, and we're trying to standardize the security measures up to the application layer, so that the user does not need to think about how can I protect my data, but it's just protected just by using our library. And on the privacy first side, I would like to mention blind broker nodes. That basically refers to the fact that we are able to set up so-called relay nodes, but they are blind to the specific data which is transported because of the end-to-end encryption. And that relieves also the need in a B2B setting. So if you can't look into what is happening, into the data, and you can also transport data for your friend, so or your for another B2B company that you know and that you would like to exchange data with. So these are two things we can discuss maybe later in the panel in the discussion about more. So that is just here for your information. Informations in our network.
I give you 1 more minute. Is that okay?
Okay, that is fine. So there, let me. Okay, so information.
Good arguments for later.
So information can be transported via different paths. So instead of setting up a new network connection, we just multiplex it with different kind of encryption modes towards the robot in this example here, because it's based on the example that I've given earlier. If we are that short in time, so here's just one more thing. So that is what we have currently done. These are the building blocks, the security building blocks that we have already implemented. But of course, we are looking for more, and there are more that we could add as a kind of initiative and as a kind of development framework for other people that they can use, and they have directly a good stake into the cybersecurity. So don't add cybersecurity at the end of your development process. Add it at the beginning, and then have less work later. So our current timeline is that we are working on our second funding, that we have the name Democratic Access Control for it, which basically refers to a separation of duties principle and the decentralized time stamping approach towards that we would like to integrate into our library. And that will be then our first release. So we hope to be ready then in the quarter 4. And then we are looking actually also for participation. So that is also why we are here. We are looking basically also for partners who would like to embrace this approach. And as said, it is open source. You can contribute, and there are many aspects where you can add complementing features to our approach. So I hope it will solve your problem, but we can elaborate on this in the Q&A session. So then again, thank you for your time. So we think our approach is an enabler for new business models. And that's basically also then the cybersecurity mesh. So it's a different approach to data and how we can protect data. So then I will give back the floor to you, Markus. Thank you again, and happy to receive your questions. I think I already saw some in the chat, and then I can already read them up.
Super, Stefan, extremely interesting. Thanks for sharing these insights, and well, keeping my fingers crossed, of course, for the fundraising for the next rounds. And let's see what UTech can do with, because we are also, as part of our networking business opportunity meetings, also trying here to help our advocates, to help the companies working with us. So we will come to that, I hope, then, and meet up again. And also for those who would like to see the even longer presentation, please show up in the next networking meetings. As such, what I found super interesting is that combination between, let's say, public access and or the ownership about data, because as we support the SDGs, the United Nations goals, I think there's a lot about giving same rights, same access to many things all around the world, and of course it's sometimes a bit of a trade-off, and I think you provided some nice solution and some nice approach here. Thank you for that. I would like to move on to Richard Jones. Richard Jones is working for and with Microsoft, and he is based in the West Midlands in England. He is delivering, or has been delivering, IT solutions for quite a while. For how long is it? More than 15 years, 16, 17 years. And so basically working with customers, delivering solutions in that regard. And for him, one of the main parts is to span the intelligence edge and intelligence cloud. Let's see what that is about, Richard, more in detail. If I could pass the word to you, and please try to keep with 10 minutes. Now we have been a bit longer, so that we also have a bit of chance to involve Louis and later get to a few questions, if that is possible.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Markus. Could you make me a presenter, please, so I can share my screen?
Normally you should. Let's see. Let me see. One moment. I made now myself a presenter. Now I can make you a presenter again. And now you should see. Do you see the icon now popping up on your side?
Yeah, I've got that. Hopefully you can see that.
We see that. Yeah.
You do see that. Okay, super. So let's get started. Thank you, Markus and the team, for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure. Richard Jones, IoT Solutions Architect in our worldwide partner ecosystem team. So what I do day to day is help customers and partners to build and deliver IoT solutions. They are complex. They involve a number of disciplines across IT and OT. And one of the big ones, of course, is security. As we've already heard from Stefan, it's so critical to build security in. It's been my pleasure and privilege to be working with these customers and partners across Europe and EMEA for the last 6 years, not quite 16 years, Marcus. I've been in IT for 27 years, delivering with Microsoft Technologies, but IoT for 6 years. A variety of customers and partners, always with some kind of physical device or physical touch point into the world, where we're trying to pull data out to get valuable insights to drive business value. And thinking about sustainability specifically, one of the big driver behind any IoT or connected system project is, of course, sustainability, because of the number of stakeholders that organizations have. Customers want to buy products from a company that respects sustainability. I've seen now evidence of investors wanting to demonstrate the carbon footprint of the portfolio that they're investing in. And of course, regulatory compliance is incredibly important as well. And adherence to that means that money is now available for organizations to invest in these kinds of projects. And in order to understand how you're performing from a carbon perspective, you have to measure at every point in your company's process, including your partners. That means continuous and accurate data visibility from across what can be a very complex estate. For example, a company, maybe a manufacturing company, will have, you might be familiar with these terms of scope 1, 2, and 3 for greenhouse gases. The direct carbon footprint that they have from their operations, but also indirect from the energy that they are consuming. So they need to demonstrate that the energy they are buying and consuming is from sustainable sources. And then thinking about the entire supply chain, both upstream and downstream, there are an awful lot of points here where you might need to measure data and pull that all together in one place, so that you can demonstrate and report on your ESG rating, your carbon footprint rating, in a consistent manner. We're seeing in IoT solutions, we started off with a lot of siloed connected assets, individually connecting with perhaps siloed systems and siloed data. In order to get real value across an environment and an ecosystem, all of that data has to be conformed and pulled together. And of course, it has to be done securely, because any solution, any connected solution will involve a combination of edge and cloud. And we need to think about, of course, security across that whole span of the solution. Really good example was the Mirai botnet. You had 100,000 webcams, all with the same username and password, that got attacked. Very easy attack vector there, and they were turned into a botnet that took down the internet access on the eastern seaboard of the United States for a day. So no chat, no online shopping, no Netflix. And another famous example that we talk about going in through a device here was in a casino with a temperature sensor in a fish tank, believe it or not. That's how the hackers got access. They then navigated the network and got access to the high roller database. So very, very high risk data there was accessed. And if we think about home automation, for example, if you have your heating system controlled through an IoT or internet-based solution, if that gets hacked and your heating is turned on, that's irritating for you. But if you do that at scale across hundreds of thousands of homes, that's actually attack on critical national infrastructure. And if you're going in through these weak devices, this is why IoT solutions can be very difficult to secure at scale. And the way at Microsoft we view IoT solutions, typically along things, insights, and actions. And I've divided these up into 4 sections. Think about the edge and connectivity and device management. I'll talk about that a bit more, because for data processing and apps and integration, application security in the cloud, that's quite a mature area. That's quite well understood now. Generally, the hard part is around the edge and the devices themselves. And thinking about the edge, any IoT solution is typically a combination of a number of different types of compute footprint. So very lightweight devices, perhaps MCU class devices that haven't really been designed to connect securely to the cloud. As you get further across that spectrum, you're probably dealing with more standard high-level operating systems that get managed and updated through traditional updating techniques. Again, it's the lighter edge and these smaller devices where typically we see a lot of the problems. At Microsoft, we released a paper a few years ago now called The 7 Properties of Highly Secure Devices. And this is the way that we say any connected device needs to have all of these properties in order to be considered secure. A lot of this work came out of the Xbox work that we've done that has gradually got more and more secure over time through the iterations. Very important area for us because of the IP protection that we needed to put on the Xbox devices. So a huge amount of money there, and reputational risk was what was driving us to do that. I'm not going to drain these, but think about hardware root of trust. This is something burned into the device that's unforgeable and unspoofable, that always uniquely identifies that device. You need to be able to report into some central reporting system in the cloud about what is happening on that device, and then also be able to update and renew the security. We have a solution called Azure Sphere, which is a combination of specially designed secure silicon, a high-level operating system, and a cloud service that all works together so that you can be sure that your device, once it's out in the wild, is secure as it possibly can be. The reason, of course, this is so important is that to achieve these high levels of business value, whether we're doing metaverse type solutions against smart buildings or carbon reporting, involves a huge amount of data coming together from different sources, including sensors, legacy systems that need to be connected, more static data, in this case for a smart building, with operations and maintenance manual, building information management, and then the physical structure of the building itself. And across there, domain expertise and security to loop all of that together before we can achieve the business value that we're actually looking for. It can be incredibly complex and so important for everyone to be collaborating and working together. So just a few points I'd like to take away. Security, of course, is always a balance between cost and the business impact. That's a decision the business has to make. The impact varies greatly across industries. Stefan talked about industrial IoT. When you have robots, safety critical machines, obviously you need a much higher level of security associated with that because the risk is a lot higher. Coming back to the business value discussion, we always make sure we have business stakeholders involved to ensure that they can justify why the solution is going in anyway, and that the business use cases can justify that. We see multiple partners being required in almost every IoT solution. It's very difficult for one organization to do absolutely everything. Think about security, think about connectivity and comms, think about data, artificial intelligence, the OT specific domain knowledge that's required. And this is where partners really need to collaborate together to drive the business value. Older devices were not meant to be connected up to the internet. They just don't have the correct security stacks. So this is an important area to focus on when looking at your IoT solution. Large fleets of devices can be turned into botnets, as we've seen, where they have common open passwords. They can be easily hacked and easily used for nefarious purposes. And then, as I mentioned as well, a seemingly mild attack, perhaps on one home, for home automation, is irritating but catastrophic when that happens at scale. We always believe in open and industry standards. Don't try and reinvent the wheel yourselves. There are plenty out there. The industry is settling on a lot of these standards now, starting to agree. So it's a lot easier for companies to work with each other. Okay, thank you. I hope that wasn't too quickly. I've tried to make some time back there, Marcus.
I didn't want to push the button so hard, but good to have a crisp and I think also very insightful presentation again from your side. Hope the audience agrees. But let's move on here. As such, then first also to introduce Louis Weil, who is based these days in Vienna, opening offices with Digital All 360 SEO in Orlando and Barcelona soon. And yeah, so you are rapidly expanding. So on the topic of cybersecurity, what would you like to add to the discussion perhaps right now, especially because you said you would rather like to add as some comments, but not to present today. But when you see basically what cybersecurity could do and where you find that it can add value, perhaps also to certain sectors, because I understand you worked very long also in the manufacturing sector. Perhaps you can give some first examples, and then we move onward. Yeah, Louis, please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus, and I'm happy to be here, and good morning for everybody. Yeah, we have been working with on the receiving side of the equation for quite some time, and we like to say most of the time we are almost a translator between the very technical requirements that they're needed for security in general. To a more simplistic but not less important language that organizations can understand and turn the interest into actions. Yeah, we started in the US, and last year we opened offices in Vienna, and we are on the process now to open also an office in Barcelona. We are a consulting firm, but we want to say we are a specialized consulting firm. Uh, I will say that for most of the clients and what we had seen on the areas that we work, we do a lot of industrial, we do a lot of consulting also for banks and insurance companies and people that the data is absolutely critical. And most of the time the discussions are around, okay, how much this is going to cost. It's a typical first question. How long, how many resources we can have, and what we found is that there's some exercises that are critical. For example, the first thing we will recommend is always to do a full assessment of where the organization is. Every organization is a different level. We have seen this more and more on SMEs, small to medium-sized organizations. Large organizations, they always have the capital to deal with the high end of the solutions. The problem is the organizations that are small to medium-sized, which typically support the large organization. And what I'm talking is, I think Stephen mentioned that is the supply chain, where your main system is connected to multiple smaller suppliers on different areas. And most of the time, the suppliers have zero to none security infrastructure or architecture on their system. To be a little bit blunt, most of the time it's a simple password. Doesn't require validation of the password, doesn't require validation of the user, and this is as simple as you can get on problems on the attacks of cybersecurity. If you look the statistics about the larger amount of issues are on the software. This SaaS services is software that are connected to mainframe systems that doesn't have the same level of security. And the second one, which had never disappeared from the beginning back when we started all this race for technology, is people. So I think that's the two areas. Typically, what we tell clients or we advise is start small and make sure that you have a progressive and scalable plan. Eventually, you're going to get to the super high-end platform for security. But if you're an SME with 200 employees that operates as a support function to a larger organization, there's some simple steps that you can immediately take to get that and certain levels of security and provide security. More and more, you will see large organization where they're going to actually do an audit or an assessment to see if you actually can fit into their security protocols. We see that already. Almost every bank will do that. You will not be able to provide any service that require a platform or some connection without being scrutinized of how the level of security that you have. So I think that probably for me, that's the main conversation always is what we can do today. We know where we are. We know that we have a lot of standards, very good, many of them. I still question that there's no harmonized one standard around, even when some people say ISO is looking into that. But that's one of the areas to work with. And the rest is education. I think we always miss the gap, and this is going into digital transformation, industrial manufacturing settings where you have a huge rush to digitalize the communications and the data using IoT devices. We spend a lot of time into the technical side, and then we forget the human factor of the equation, which typically carries most of the problems in one way or the other, either phishing emails or open terminals, you name it, we had seen it. So I think we'll be good now to start getting into the actual discussion. I'm not a PowerPoint fan, so I would like to open, if with Marcus, it's okay to start getting into the actual conversations.
Thank you, Lee. We don't have too much time because we only go until 10, I'm afraid. But apart from this, never mind. This is why we have next week the networking meeting to dig deeper into discussions. So, and of course, we are inviting you, dear panelists, also to be there to share more, but also perhaps to dig deeper again, as said. But perhaps one more question on my side is Internet of Things. And when I look from my perspective, working with all the different alliances which we have, so there are all the different sectors represented by UTech, all is technology driven. What do you think, and perhaps each of you can make a little statement here, what are the key industries where you think IoT can make a difference? Plus, of course, your cyber security approach, and what can UTech do to move here faster? I think that would be extremely interesting for us, perhaps as a little summary, at least for today, what I could capture here. But on the details, I would then really say, let's go into next week networking meetings. Let's go step by step as we started. So I think we started here with Stefan. Could you answer first and give a little statement on that? Just 1 minute.
That's a tough question. One of the major parts where I really think that we need to add is privacy, and that also then relates to the health sector and to the IoT health sector. So we need to be aware that protecting our digital identities, there are already digital shadows of us in the internet. Protecting our identities is really critical, and we need to do a lot more in terms of security and privacy measures in the world to do this. So that is the health sector, and especially the IoT health sector, would be one of my first guesses, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan. Health is not yet part of us, but we are working on it to establish an alliance, especially for that one. So good point. Richard, to you, please.
So sorry, Marcus, can you just give me that question again?
Yeah, basically the question is, do you see on where can IoT move certain sectors faster, and what UTech could do to help you with your business, basically?
Yeah, I think it's a question of raising confidence and actually having the discipline to go through very well structured business value conversations first. So very often we talk about technology first, and that's very important, especially from a security perspective. But I would always come back to driving projects slowly and proving business value incrementally. gaining confidence from the rest of the business and increasing that investment over a period of time to enable you to scale that solution, which is where you're really going to get the richer insights, as well as pulling the multiple data sources in. And that really does need to be done incrementally. So I would always say, build a strong business value case first.
That sounds a bit like what Louis said last, but there's something you would like to add on top, Louis, please.
No, I think it's Richard and Stefan are correct. I like to say that I'm the pragmatic maybe on the panel. I think it's for me it's simple. You know, it's imagination, right? Any organization have a peculiar set of requirements. And I almost can guarantee that there's a device out there that can solve a problem to that. And if not, there's plenty of people, we work with many of them all the time, that will design that in a short period of time. So I think it's first organization have to look where are there opportunities to use interconnectivity and move from there. There's plenty of platform experts like Richard and Steven that we will create that idea and make it into a solution.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. I think that was also a good buzzword in a positive sense to look for opportunities, because I think this is what EUTEC is about with its multi-alliance approach, because we are representing all the different regions, all the different impact areas, but also the technology areas. And I think here, one of the main challenges, of course, is also to step out of the silo thinking, to see on how your expertise can help the different sectors and vice versa to work together. So certainly all the audience, you're certainly invited not only to visit this networking meetings, which are typical for IoT, but also to the others to see and how we can move things further. I think that would be at least, a very simple summary from my side. On the technical side, as said, I would certainly like to see you all next week in our IoT networking meeting, and then there will be also a business opportunity meeting after. So we are transitioning these days to have the different structure in our networking meetings, where on the one hand, it's to get introduced, while on the other hand, also look into, we were seeing that there are also a number of tenders, a number of programs, programmatic initiatives out there, to identify them, to see and who can partner with whom, or how can I find a certain supporter where I don't have the right competence inside my own organization. I think all of this is very relevant, and we try to help here and to assist you all. So with this, I would like to close, at least from my side. Dear panelists, thank you so much for taking the time. I would like to pass the word now to Jörg Tuchen. Jörg Tuchen has a little present to all of you. And Jörg, would you like to take over here?
Hello, Marcus. I couldn't hear your last words, but I think you have handed over to me now, right?
That's it. Yeah, we are coming to the closure, and I hope you have some Christmas tree with you.
Yeah, something like that. So thank you very much, Marcus. As Marcus said, my name is Jörg Tuchen. I'm chair of the Climate Action Commission at EUTEC, as well as managing director of GoBlueNow, and we are a climate consulting company helping other companies on their transition towards a 1.5 degree compatible future. And as in many, many webinars, I have the pleasure and the honor to hand over a tree certificate to each of you speakers and panelists. And having quickly introduced myself, you will immediately see that's a special pleasure for me to hand over a tree certificate, because obviously that has a lot to do with climate and climate change. So first of all, thank you very, very much for being here, for your time, for sharing your experiences, for engaging into such a lively discussion with us. That's really high value and highly appreciated. And the tree certificate for Richard, you can already see. I will show the others as well in a minute. And of course, I will send these tree certificates to you immediately after the webinar. So thank you, Richard. Here is your tree certificate, as you can see it.
Thank you.
Stefan, your tree certificate as well, of course, as well as for Louis. So thank you very much again. And whoever is interested in learning more about our tree planting program in Africa, Marcus mentioned it before, we are doing a lot there, or learning more about the kind of consulting services GoBlueNow is offering for companies. then please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to engage into any kind of discussion, address and answer all your questions. And having said that, I wish you a great day and also a great, slowly upcoming weekend. Take care and see you soon.
Thank you, Jörg. Indeed. Thank you all again. See you very soon again. And I hope wherever you are, there will be not so hot temperatures as we experienced in the past this week. So at least nearby my place, it's cooling down. So fingers crossed. See you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.